From KUOW in Seattle, welcome to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman, and welcome to our Seattle City Council District 2 debate. Give it up for D2, everybody. So we have two candidates running to represent Southeast Seattle, including Beacon Hill, the Chinatown International District, Columbia City, and Rainier Beach. This seat was left vacant earlier this year when former councilmember Tammy Morales left the role. It's been temporarily filled by interim councilmember Mark Solomon, but he's going to step aside once voters decide which candidate they want to represent their community. That could be Adonis Ducksworth, who serves as Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell's transportation policy manager, or Eddie Lynn, an assistant attorney for the Seattle City Attorney's Office. Please welcome our candidates out tonight to the KUOW studios. So they are both campaigning on platforms that prioritize key issues like transportation, public safety, and housing. We're going to ask them all about that tonight. Based on past statements, these two candidates do share a lot of similar views on how to solve many of the issues in the district, so we'll be trying to dial in on differences tonight. Please welcome yourselves as well. I'm going to ask you to applaud one more time. Thank you for coming out on a weeknight to this debate. Really appreciate it. So before we get started, we have a couple rules to go over for the debate. Each candidate is going to have 90 seconds to answer a new question. After that, you will have a 45-second rebuttal as the other candidate. If during your rebuttal, you make a specific claim about your opponent or my friend over here, if it's by name, whatever, you're referencing your colleague and making a specific claim, they are going to get another 30 seconds to respond to that. There will also be a lightning round designed for very brief one-word answers or very short answers at the end, and that's going to wrap us up, followed by 1-minute closing statements. We're not going to do opening statements for this debate. We like to keep things moving pretty quickly, but we will have 1-minute closing statements at the end. So in order to keep things moving quickly, we have a little bit of help. If you go over time, you might hear this sound. That is a Washington State Ferry foghorn. You might also hear this sound. That's our friendly seagull, or maybe this. Crows love clocks, and they love democracy. Okay, so we, again, not doing opening statements, but we're going to get right down to business. Everybody ready to go?
Ready.
Sure.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. And let's start with the issue of gun violence. First question is going to go to Adonis Ducksworth, and your rebuttal, Eddie Lynn, will follow. Gun violence is a big concern for District 2. Just in the past couple of weeks, there have been multiple shootings in D2, including a fatal shooting in the CID. Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes told KUOW News that the disturbance that preceded that CID shooting was caught on one of the city's real-time crime center cameras. Now, I asked SPD for more details about this. They said that that is still an open investigation, but they pointed me to several examples of recent arrests that were made related to crimes in the CID, where the department claims cameras aided the investigation. So the city council recently voted to approve more cameras in the city. Adonis Ducksworth, both you and your opponent Eddie Lynn have said that you don't think these cameras are a good idea. Why not? You have 90 seconds.
Sure. Thanks. Well, first, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to be here and to be here on KUOW doing this. It's great. One clarification, I have been back with SDOT ever since launching my campaign. So I'm not in the mayor's office. I'm with the Seattle Department of Transportation. But
Thank
I'm
you for that
question.
clarification.
Yes.
Let's reset for 90 seconds. I want to make sure he gets a full answer here.
Yeah. So
and we'll correct that as well when we air this interview. So thank you so much. 90 seconds. You have to respond to this question.
Well, it's a great question. Cameras are not going to solve gun violence. I think where we're at with gun violence, how we got here with gun violence, is a very complex issue, and it goes back a long way. Gun violence, as we know, disproportionately impacts people of color. The South End, we make up about 13% of the city's population, but we account for over a third of the gun violence in the city. And a lot of that has to do with poverty. It has to do with years of disinvestment, years of trauma. And a lot of those kinds of things are not just going to be undone overnight, and they're not going to be undone with a camera. So I just want to start there. So if we really want to address our gun violence issues, we need to start with what I like to say is stability. And that's stability in the home, that's stability with education, that's stability with health. And a lot of this starts, I believe, and what some of the data tells us and what the research tells us, is that when a person, and stay with me on this, is when a person finds out that they're going to have a child, that's when we need to start the work. Right? It's not so much about where the mother comes from or where the mother is going, but making sure that they have stable housing, they have access to stable health care, they have access to stable employment.
You have about 5 seconds left.
Okay. So I think it starts there, because if we invest in our youth, if we invest in our prenatal care, 0 to 5, we're going to see dividends and returns, especially when it comes to things like public safety.
Thank you. Candidate Eddie Lynn, as I noted, you share skepticism of the real-time crime center cameras that were recently expanded by the city council. 45 seconds for a response to what you heard from Adonis Ducksworth.
Yeah, thank you, Libby. Super excited to be here. Longtime fan of KUOW, and thanks for Adonis for being here. And, I fully agree with Adonis's points. And like you said, we both oppose the expansion of the surveillance. And, I think we have to be aware of what's going on at the federal level, right? And I know that we have some protections for our surveillance data, but we've also seen those protections fail at many different levels. At the state level, where the feds have gotten a hold of our Department of Licensing data, and they're going after health data. And so right now is not the time. Surveillance, it can be an investigatory tool, but as Adonis was saying, it doesn't prevent crime. We need to be investing in the community. We need to be investing in gun buyback programs and gun lock storage programs, and getting our youth connected with apprenticeships and good jobs.
Thank you. Candidate Eddie Lynn, Seattle never defunded the police by 50%, as many members of the city council had committed to in 2020. But like many big city police forces, SPD was hit with a wave of separations and struggled to fill vacancies for years following the pandemic and George Floyd protests. After 2021, the police budget has grown significantly year over year, and hiring is back. That's a lot of what's driving the $33 million bump to SPD funding that's in Mayor Harrell's new budget proposal. That plan also includes almost $10 million for more care community crisis responders. My question to you is, are we properly funding the Seattle Police Department, and what changes to public safety spending would you bring as a member of the council? You have 90 seconds.
Yeah, we need to take a comprehensive approach to public safety. So first of all, we need to be investing in basic needs, so things like housing and healthcare and mental health. We need to expand our CARES team, so that is where we send out social workers and mental health care providers when there's a 911 call. And we need to update the contract with the Police Officers Guild so that they can go out on their own, so it doesn't have to be accompanied by a police officer. We do need to hire more police. We need to hire more diverse police officers who come from our communities, who understand our diverse communities, diverse cultures and languages. We need to hire more women on the force, and we need real accountability. Going back to 2020, we've had a long time difficulties with policing in our community across the country. Really, I've experienced misconduct by police officers myself, and it's traumatizing. And especially in D2, there's a lack of trust between many in our community and the police, and that results in a lack of public safety when you don't have a trusting relationship. So in order to build that trust, that's where we really need to lean into civilian oversight. When there's a misconduct allegation, having civilian oversight instead of having sergeants do those investigations. But we absolutely need to do
5 seconds.
More mental health care providers, because that allows our police to respond to our most urgent public safety needs if they're not responding to those mental health calls.
Thank you. Adonis Ducksworth, you have 45 seconds to respond.
Yeah, it's an interesting and complex topic when we start talking about the police, especially when we're talking about police and we're talking about people that look like me. right? People of color. And so I wholeheartedly agree that if we are going to hire more police officers, if we're going to invest in our police force, those officers have to be accountable, they have to be representative, and they have to be able to form relationships for the community. And if they can't do any of those things, they don't deserve to be a police officer in the city of Seattle.
Thank you. Another big question on people's minds is about how we treat people with addiction and substance use disorder in the city of Seattle. Adonis Ducksworth, you were endorsed by the Seattle Times. Your opponent is endorsed by The Stranger. We'll pause to make sure. Just a little closer, just moving people slightly. Yep, thank you, Sarah. That's Sarah Leibovitz, everybody. Yay! Thank you, managing producer. Okay, let me start that over again. 3, 2, 1. Another big question on people's minds is how to help people who are navigating substance use disorder in the city of Seattle. Adonis Ducksworth, you were endorsed by the Seattle Times. Your opponent, Eddie Lynn, was endorsed by The Stranger. And we want to dial into that Stranger endorsement and kind of give you some chance to respond to some things that they said. So when The Stranger talked about their endorsement, they reported that there was a back and forth between you and Eddie Lynn that was a deciding factor in their endorsement of Lynn. According to The Stranger, they said that you talked about going on a ride-along where only 1 out of at least 50 people that you came across on the street were receptive of drug treatment when asked. The Stranger says that then Eddie kind of interjected. There was a bit of a back and forth and talked about treatment options. And you replied that these individuals were not asking about treatment options, but were instead, quote, they are getting high. So, Adonis, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about this because I think it was a pivotal point in the campaign when The Stranger talked about that. Why do you think people on your ride along were not open to treatment options? And how would you change things if you were on the city council? And you have 90 seconds.
Sure. So this is another topic that is incredibly near and dear to my heart. And when it comes to the endorsement process, which we've done a lot of interviews, and it's really hard to convey what it's like to be in a room with 4 people and you have an hour and everyone gets to speak for about 20 minutes and then the newspaper makes a decision about that. So it was completely taken out of context what The Stranger said. My dad, he was in the military. He was an airborne ranger. And when he got out of the military, he struggled with substance abuse and he wasn't able to live in our home, and he ended up living on the street, and he ultimately died from his alcoholism. I had my own struggles with it, and I've been sober for 10 years. So to be characterized as uninformed about addiction is completely wrong. And so what I was saying in the interview, and we've seen this and we know this, is that when a person is in the throes of addiction, when a person is actively using drugs, they're not thinking about much other than finding more drugs. And when we're talking about speed, when we're talking about opium or opioids, we're talking about people who, if they don't do these, if they don't get another fix, they will get sick. And that makes it hard for them to stop. And so what I was saying was,
10 seconds.
Okay. And what I was saying is that in the moment, they're not thinking about those things. They're thinking about the next hit. And so what we need to do is make sure that we get them the medicine that they need for when they're ready to stop. They won't get sick, and we have quality treatment. We have quality shelter for folks who are ready to stop.
Thank you. I wanted to give you a chance, 45 seconds, Eddie Lynn, to talk about this too, because in The Stranger's coverage, you seem to be saying that there's something wrong with the services that we're offering for addiction treatment in the city that keeps people from taking those options. What did you mean by that? 45 seconds.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who have struggled or currently are struggling with mental health or drug addiction or alcoholism, and it's also, impacting my family. I've lost an older brother to alcoholism. That, a lot of our social services are not funded at the level that they need to be. And people oftentimes might try, a shelter, but maybe they were offered a shelter that was a congregate shelter where they weren't allowed to, have their pet or a partner there. And so that was a traumatizing experience. Or they might go to a treatment facility, but it might not be, well suited to their needs. And so people oftentimes get traumatized from the services or not having individualized services. So that's what I was trying to point out, that we need to tailor our services, and we need to fund them at the depth needed to meet people's needs.
Thank you. Still on the subject of services, but this time on homelessness. In April, the Seattle Times reported that the city has taken down more than 8,000 tents over the past 2 years. Eddie Lynn, do you think that the city's practice of clearing encampments has been an effective way to address homelessness in Seattle? You have 90 seconds.
It has not, and I think we can all see that. Unfortunately, when there's a large encampment removal or sweep, downtown, it gets moved to the Little Saigon. When there's one in Little Saigon or Soto, it gets pushed down to Beacon Hill. And in a lot of the reporting, people were saying, well, it's not really, or they're just getting dispersed. So it's not a large encampment, but it's small encampments everywhere. And that's not addressing the root cause of the issue. And again, when you just push people around, they lose their belongings, they lose their medication. And it just gets even harder for them to trust the government, for them to get stabilized. So we need to build shelter. We need to provide treatment. We need to work with programs. So I did a tour of Purpose Dignity Action. They have a site off of Aurora, and they do deep individualized care for folks. They get them housed, and then they do aftercare for up to 12 months to stay with that person. And that's, but if you can do it once, but if you can do it right, we're going to see a better results on our investments. Right now, we're spending so much pushing people around, spreading the investment so thin that we're not actually solving the problem.
Thank you. Adonis Ducksworth, you have 45 seconds to respond. How do you feel about encampment clearances?
Well, first, I just want to say that, like I talked about with my dad, a lot of these folks, these are people's moms, they're their dads, they're their brothers, they're their sisters, their aunts and uncles. They're people that we went to school with, and it's unfortunate when folks fall into these situations to where they don't have a roof over their head, whether that's because they couldn't afford where they were living, they had substance or mental abuse issues, or some other issue that put them on the street. And so while we definitely need the quality services and quality shelter, the things that Eddie had talked about, we also need to think about what we're doing upstream to keep people from going into homelessness. And so we need to make sure that we're providing housing at all the different levels so that for folks who maybe can't afford market rate, there's affordable housing. And if they can't afford affordable housing, they have 30% of AMI or below housing, some type of housing for everyone to fit into, because we need to stop the stream of people moving into homeless as well as dealing with the folks who are on the street.
Just going to give you another 30 seconds here because I didn't hear specifically. I heard Eddie Lynn say that he does not think that the encampment clearances have been an effective way to address homelessness. So I wanted to give you another chance. Do you have a position on whether the city clearing thousands of encampments is an effective way to address homelessness? 30 seconds.
No, I don't think it's an effective way of dealing with homelessness. I think we need to work on the things that we can do upstream to keep people from moving into homelessness. I think moving and pushing people around, and we see it happening right now in Rainier. Folks who were in Chinatown International District, Little Saigon, have moved down to Charles Street, right? We can see it moving farther and farther south. So they're still homeless. They've only just moved, right? So no, it's not an effective way to do that.
Thank you. So closely related to homelessness is the housing crisis. Seattle's comprehensive plan is a big blueprint for the city's future growth over the next 10 years. The plan, recently adopted by the city council, increases zoning for housing density and establishes newer, denser neighborhood centers in parts of Seattle. Adonis Ducksworth, you and your opponent, Eddie Lynn, have both talked about wanting this density to be distributed fairly throughout Seattle instead of just in the southeast area and District 2. Where would you like to see housing go, and how do you make that happen with what we've seen before, neighborhood pushback, other issues?
Sure.
90 seconds.
Yeah, good question. More housing in more places. I can't say that there's one specific neighborhood that should take on more housing, more places throughout the entire city is the best way that I could put that. And obviously with that comes the zoning. And in 2026, we will have that opportunity to zone for density and zone for density all over the city. And it's not just on the arterials, but it's throughout the neighborhood residential as well. And we also need to make sure that we've got the right funding in place to help those who want to build affordable housing. But then the other thing that we need to do is make sure that we are streamlining our permitting so that folks who do want to build and want to build affordable housing, it is as easy and as smooth a process for them to do it right now. Because what we've seen with our housing permits, it's gone down to basically like zero. And what a lot of our affordable housing providers, the ones who are building right now, tell us is that that is a big barrier right there. So in order to solve that, we need to make sure that our Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections is staffed up with the right people. And we look at new and innovative and creative ways to speed up our permitting process.
Thank you. Candidate Lynn, how would you work to distribute more housing density in other parts of the city? Again, we've had vocal opposition to greater density in parts of Seattle, and there's also, significant pushback when it comes to the tree canopy and other concerns with greater density. How would you address that? You have 45 seconds.
Yeah, so for many years, we had what was called single-family zoning. We don't have that anymore. We have neighborhood residential. But for many years, large parts of our city were basically locked off from multifamily, from rental housing. And oftentimes these were what are called like high opportunity areas. These are areas where there's plenty of tree canopy and parks and you're on the waterfront. And so we do need to make sure that there's housing opportunities throughout the city, that we aren't, again, repeating those mistakes of the past. We are a deeply segregated city because of those prior decisions that we're segregated based on homeownership versus renter versus class and race due to historical racial covenants. So we need to do everything we can to have a more integrated city, and we should be planning around transit and transportation, not putting all of the multifamily housing on arterials, but making sure that we are planning both around schools and transit. And I'll stop there.
That seagull is a NIMBY.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. He talked to me before the debate. You're listening to Soundside on KUOW. We are hosting our debate for the District 2 seat on the Seattle City Council. I'm here with candidates Adonis Ducksworth and Eddie Lynn in studio at KUOW. And let's talk taxes, shall we? As budget season is ramping up again, Seattle's facing a projected $150 million shortfall. Not as bad as initially feared, but still not great. You've both talked about supporting new progressive taxes, like the Seattle capital gains tax, which the council narrowly rejected, but it could come back again. Opponents of new taxes have pointed out that Amazon, for example, did transfer some jobs over to Bellevue because of the Jumpstart payroll tax on big businesses in Seattle. Eddie Lynn, to you first. Are you concerned that taxing the rich, like the capital gains tax, could cost Seattle more jobs?
I think you always have to be mindful of that. I'm not convinced that that's the reason that they shifted jobs over to the east side. There could be many different reasons. People like to live on the east side for, there's strong schools over there. There might be other reasons that people are, and they might want to attract employees just to have a more diverse, office space across their portfolio. They might be trying to play, Bellevue off of Seattle, in different ways. But, many of the wealthiest in our country just got one of the largest tax cuts in history from the federal Trump tax cut, but we're going to see the cuts locally to Medicaid and Medicare and SNAP. So we absolutely need to fix our upside down tax code. Currently, our lowest income folks pay about 14% of their income in taxes through sales taxes and property taxes, and the wealthy pay about 3.5%. And that's immoral and it's bad public policy. And we're never going to meet the needs of our community unless we address our tax code. So the Jumpstart payroll tax, which was passed in 2020, has been a huge benefit to the city, and that is a tax on the high earners of the largest companies, and it's basically prevented massive cuts to our budget over the past 4 or 5 years. So we absolutely need to defend that jumpstart payroll tax. We can increase the rates at any time that we have enough votes on council to do so. And yeah, absolutely, I would love to support a capital gains tax. Again, you need to be mindful. There could be discussions about what the rate is for that capital gains tax, so you're not incentivizing companies or people to move. But I think we need it and we should pass it.
We are going to ask more about the Jumpstart tax. So just letting you know, in your rebuttal here, Adonis Ducksworth, can you address how do we avoid losing jobs in Seattle if we pass new taxes, especially on the wealthy?
Yeah, I'm not like Eddie said, I'm not totally convinced that jobs are moving to other places only because of the tax. There's probably a whole host of reasons, a whole suite of reasons why a business may decide that they don't want to do business in Seattle. And that could be a combination of taxes. It could be a combination of public safety. It could be a combination of not finding the right workers in that location. And so just pointing it to the tax it's not convincing to me. But while I do support and I do believe that the wealthy should pay their fair share, we also need to make it easier, and we need to make it more affordable for folks who are struggling and who need services the most, right? So while we are taxing the rich, we also need to make sure we're putting money back in the pockets of the people who need it most. And there's a number of ways to do that. There's guaranteed basic income. There was a really great
You want to finish that thought?
Sure. A really great pilot that was done in King County where we saw where guaranteed basic income of the folks who need it the most actually brought people up, took them a step up out of poverty.
Thank you. So back to the Jumpstart tax. A few weeks ago, Mayor Bruce Harrell released his proposed budget, which would once again pull a large chunk of that Jumpstart tax into the general fund to help avoid major service cuts. The tax was originally, back in the day, intended for a specific set of purposes, like funding affordable housing, climate initiatives. Labor leaders and others have pushed back against the tax being diverted in big amounts for the general fund. Jumpstart has also proved pretty volatile. The revenue up and down and up again, actually down right now. Candidate Ducksworth, do you think the Jumpstart revenue should be reserved specifically for those original purposes, the housing and climate purposes, or do you agree with the way the city is leaning on it to balance the budget? 90 seconds.
The plan is the plan and you stick to the plan. And when you divert from the plan, that's when they lose trust and that's when they lose faith in their local government, which is a problem, which is a big problem. I understand that, I've worked in the city and I've worked in the mayor's office, worked on policy, I've worked on budgets. And while you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out how are we going to keep employees, how are we going to keep services, you're looking up, you're looking through every nook and cranny of how you could do this, right? And so there's Jumpstart.
You got a minute. Sorry.
Oh, sure. No. And so they say, well, here's Jumpstart. We have this reserve of cash over here. So we're going to move this cash over here to plug this hole. But it's almost like taking out a loan against yourself. And at some point, and when would you pay that back? And without a real plan to do that, I think this is bad policy to do that. And I think also when people look at, like, say, the Seattle process, why do we have the Seattle process? Why do we go through these things and debate things over and over and over again? A plan is a plan, and we stick to the plan. We stick to what the legislation is. Because when we don't do that, that's when people lose faith in local government.
You were probably pausing for dramatic effect, and I was like looking at the clock oh my gosh.
People can't react.
That's me. I can't leave silences. Broadcaster impulses. Eddie Lynn, 45 seconds for you to respond and your take on the diversion of Jumpstart in order to balance the budget.
Yeah, it should stay with the original purposes, affordable housing, the Green New Deal, equitable development initiative. Those were priorities. They continue to be top priorities. And I do think, in part, because of the fluctuating amount of the revenue, that's also hard if you're using it to backfill the budget, the general budget. Versus if you have it for these specific purposes, they can adjust to the different amounts. But if you're just paying for everything under the sun, it's a lot harder to tailor the city's overall budget to that fluctuating revenue amount. Also agree that it's hard when you tell the public you're passing this new tax with these specific purposes, and then you switch it up. So I don't support rating it again this year.
Final question, and you're both going to have 90 seconds to answer this one. Pedestrian and driver safety are big issues facing District 2. Rainier Avenue and MLK Way are widely considered some of Seattle's most dangerous roads. For example, the Seattle Times spoke to a resident on Rainier recently who says cars have crashed into her home several times in the past year alone. Some residents put the blame on motorists driving drunk and speeding and a lack of enforcement, but they also have pointed to issues in the road's design. Some have called, again, for cameras we've discussed earlier in this debate. Seattle's Department of Transportation has taken steps to address safety on this road, like replacing guardrails and installing an enhanced crosswalk. The city is also installing school zone speed cameras across the city. Eddie Lynn, do you think that there's an issue with the design here, with enforcement? What do you think is needed for greater safety for pedestrians and drivers in D2?
Yeah, we do have some of the most dangerous roads anywhere in the city, MLK, Rainier. So there's three ways. And I've learned a lot of this from listening to Adonis and all these different debates. You spend a lot of time together. There's design, there is enforcement, and there's education. And
He's cribbing your material?
Yes,
I guess so.
We learn from each other. And so... absolutely. Design, in my mind, should be the first tool that we should be using to correct. And people are just driving too fast. We have people that are using these roads to commute through the community, and then other times people are even drag racing on MLK. So yeah, we should be doing things like raised crosswalks, other ways to get people to slow down. Do have concerns about cameras, again, especially at this time because of the data security issues. Also, just in general, I think enforcement should be the last tool that we go towards. In the past, currently we have not been using police officers to enforce this directly very often, although I did hear a rumor that there was a police officer with a radar gun out recently. So maybe that's starting back up. And I do, I think that gets people to slow down, but we've also seen, disproportionate impacts from racial profiling and so on in the past. And so I have concerns about using the police to get people to slow down. So design would be the preferred method.
And that's time. Adonis, design, enforcement, or what to make the roads safer? And again, you have 90 seconds for this one.
Yeah. And again, I appreciate this question as somebody who has spent their whole professional career in transportation. It means a lot to have these conversations about transportation. But also, too, I have a 15-year-old who's learning to drive. She's really anxious to drive, and she's turned 16 in December, and she will be driving. And it's really, really scary to think about her driving around South Seattle. It's very scary as a parent to let go and let her be out there on the street. And I think a lot of parents feel that too. And you have your education, you have your engineering, you have your enforcement. Eddie had talked about those things. But really, as a council member, as somebody in that position, there's a couple things I think we can do. And one of those things I think we can do as a council person is get out of the DOT's way to do the work that they know works to keep people safe on the roads. They're the professionals. They're the engineers. They're the ones who've traveled all over the world and have great examples of what works. And unfortunately, what happens is a lot of folks like to get in there and say, well, you should be doing this here and you should be doing that there. When the DOT knows what works, they know what keeps people safe. The other thing that needs to happen too is we have funding. We have a transportation levy that passed, and the Seattle transit measure will be up for renewal in 2027. And so the other thing we need to do is make sure that we are prioritizing. You have strong leadership on council to prioritize those funds to do the safety improvements that they need in South Seattle.
Thank you. That's the end of our question section. We have just a minute here for a lightning round, so I'll get right to it. We flipped a coin, and the first person to answer this is going to be Eddie Lynn. One name, and I just want one name in answer. Bruce Harrell or Katie Wilson?
Katie Wilson.
Adonis?
Undecided.
Okay, Pho Bok Sup Shop, Mama Sambusa Kitchen, or King Donuts, Adonis?
Oh, that's not fair. Hong is right there. So
Wait, are you
yeah,
King?
He runs King Donuts.
You run King Donuts?
Oh man,
Wait,
come on
I
now.
didn't even know this. We did not plan this, everybody. All right, so
King Donut.
if the owner of King Donut is here, I guess you both have to say King Donuts.
Gonna say
Hey,
King's Donuts.
this is really exciting. You're a celebrity. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, next question. Taking the light rail or the streetcar, Eddie?
Light rail.
Light rail.
Okay, you have visitors coming to town. You have a day to spend in D2. Where do you spend it, Adonis?
Jefferson Skate Park.
Lake Washington.
Finally, it is officially October, which means we're entering the season of all things spooky. If you are dressing up as anything for Halloween, what is it going to be, Eddie?
I'm gonna go to the Ben, a ghoul.
A ghoul.
Ghoul. Yeah.
Okay, and you took a really literal approach to this, which I love. Adonis.
Oh man, I've never dressed up for Halloween before.
What?
Nah.
Really?
Yeah, no.
So
no,
you're the
no.
guy that doesn't dress up at the party?
Nah.
All right. That's the end of our lightning round, everybody. Take that, voters, for what it is. We're going to get to closing statements here. And again, we flipped a coin. Eddie, you're going to go first. You have 1 minute.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you to Adonis. Thank you for everybody here in the audience. I would just be proud to earn your vote to represent District 2. Eddie Lynn, I've been in the city attorney's office for the past 6 years working on affordable housing. And we've seen our city go towards, we're at a crossroads as families are getting pushed out of the city. And unfortunately, folks are getting priced out and too many are landing on the streets. Now is the time for us to invest in our community, invest in what we know works, housing, shelter, mental health, and more treatment and services. And we should be taxing the wealthiest corporations that did just get one of the largest tax cuts, and the wealthiest in our community, for them to pay their fair share, because we're never going to be able to meet the needs of our community by taxing working families the most. So thank you. Would be honored to earn your support, and again, appreciate being here.
1 minute to you, Adonis.
Yeah, so thank you for just this opportunity, and I would love to represent the district and the neighborhoods that raised me. I'll just tell a quick little story. I was with a friend of mine that I grew up with. She moved away, and she was back visiting, and we were driving back into the city over 99, and so you could see the skyline of the city. And I asked her, I said, with the 2 new stadiums and the new waterfront and the Great Wheel, has Seattle changed? And she said something that was pretty profound to me. She said, no, I don't think this city's changed. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, no, it's still Seattle. The heart and soul of Seattle is still here. And I feel it. I think it's what a lot of people who've moved here, they feel it. And there's a lot of people who've been here their whole lives. They still feel that heart and soul of Seattle. And we are at a moment right now to where we can really work to preserve that, where this is a working class town that is a diverse town. It's a town that believes in equity. It's a town that believes in inclusion. We have great, mountains and recreation. And that's something that in arts and culture, that is something that brought people here. That's something that keeps people here. And we're at a moment in time right now to where we could lose that. And I really want to continue to fight for that.
Thank you to everybody who came out tonight for this District 2 debate. Thank you to candidates Adonis Ducksworth and Eddie Lynn. And ballots are going to be in mailboxes very shortly, everybody. Remember to get those in the mail or in a drop box by November 4th. And give it up for everybody who came out tonight for democracy on a weeknight to the KUOW studios. Happy voting, everybody.